distinguished speakers and participants from all over the world. For those of you here in the room, just for you to know that we have an audience dialing into Zoom and following this meeting. My name is Vanessa Erogbogbo, and I'm the Chief of the Sustainable and Inclusive Value Chain section at the International Trade Center. And such a pleasure to be here with you today. I was so delighted when I walked in and saw so many people together. Despite the best efforts of COVID, we're here together, and we're going to have a really interesting discussion, I think, on gender lens investing. In the spirit of building bridges, we've partnered with the UN SDG Lab and Building Bridges to officially launch a new publication by ITC's SheTrades initiative, 12 Lessons in Gender Lens Investing. The SheTrades initiative is ITC's flagship program on women's economic empowerment, with a goal of connecting 3 million women to market by the end of 2021. We're almost there, and we're on track to meet our target. In today's event, we're going to highlight the key findings of this publication and facilitate a discussion that bridges government, financial services, women entrepreneur, and international agency perspectives. But let me start with a brief introduction to our distinguished speakers. We're privileged to have with us today Her Excellency Ambassador Alicia Victoria Arango Olmos. She's the permanent representative of Colombia to the United Nations and other international organizations in Geneva. And this is her second time round in the role, I understand. Ambassador Arango has decades of top-level experience, having previously served as Minister of the Interior, Minister with Presidential Functions, Minister of Labor, Chief of Debate in the presidential campaign of Ivan Duque Marquez, and Chief of Staff of the Office of President Alvaro Uribe Vélez. With the perspective of financial services, Ms. Marie Poe, she's the head of impact management at Bamboo Capital Partners, and prior to joining Bamboo, she worked in corporate social responsibility within multinational companies, in sustainability consulting, and in microfinance. And then with us on the screen or virtually, you can't see them yet, but I'm sure that you'll be able to see them when they're speaking. Ms. Gwendolyn Zorn, she's the head of impact at FATISA. She's primarily focused on addressing poverty and food security in Africa through food value chain investments, recognizing the link to commerciality. And we also have Ms. Alice Lajoie, project manager of Women Empowerment Project from Opportunity International Africa. In this role, Alice is at the forefront of championing gender inclusive financing at Opportunity International Africa in Uganda, and bringing the voice of women entrepreneurs from India and from Zambia. Ms. Madhumita Sakaguha, she's an interior architecture and design professional. She founded Lux Living, manufacturing home furnishing accessories and later expanding to garments, fabric, and fashion accessories. Ms. Lillian Ndabanize, she's the CEO and co-founder of Wood Energy Africa, a social for-profit company based in Zambia, focusing on lending portfolio and distribution network. And their mission is to empower women to become the champions and advocates of clean and renewable energy. Fantastic to hear more from them as we go into the panel. And then finally, representing international organizations, two very inspiring speakers who will be providing the opening and closing remarks today. One I know very well, our own, ITC's own, Dorothy Tembo, Deputy Executive Director of the International Trade Center, with decades of experience in trade and development, having previously served as the Executive Director of the Enhanced Integrated Framework based at the WTO, Chief Trade Negotiator and Director of Foreign Trade in the Ministry of Commerce, Trade and Industry of Zambia, and numerous other top roles in the trade and investment sector. And finally, Ms. Nadia Isla, Director of SDG Lab at the UN Geneva. Nadia also has a long career in international development with several years of field experience in bilateral cooperation and extensive experience in multilateral affairs within and outside the UN system. Without further ado, allow me to introduce Ms. Dorothy Tembo to the stage to provide us with opening remarks. Dorothy, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Vanessa. A very good afternoon, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you that are very near, I am very, very pleased to be joining you this afternoon to share with you a few thoughts by way of opening this session that we have this afternoon. But those that are far, we are very pleased that you can also join us via media, and we certainly look forward to you engaging with everybody in the room. I'm very honored to open this session to launch the publication of the 12 lessons in gender lens investing. Let me begin by thanking the partners hosting this event, the United Nations SDG Lab, Building Bridges, and of course, our distinguished panelists who will share their insights with us this afternoon. And I believe and I'm convinced that we will certainly be having a very fascinating and lively discussion. I also want to congratulate everybody for your efforts in supporting women around the world, because this is really what it is we are about this morning, and the many other interventions that have been going on in our different institutions and from different perspectives. As the world still grapples with COVID-19, there is a strong evidence that shows that investing in women is essential to support global recovery efforts. We all know that women play a vital role in the international trade environment and are important drivers of growth. Studies have shown that women own and lead approximately 30% of all small and medium enterprises in the world. And SMEs are responsible for providing 70% of employment worldwide. Although the evidence is clear that women's economic empowerment is vital to boost business competitiveness and fuel more inclusive and fair trade practices, there remains a dearth in public discussion on the untapped potential of investing in women entrepreneurs. This is a fact, and I believe that many of you know that this is really the reality we are dealing with. A major challenge women face in advancing their business endeavors and succeeding in regional and global markets is access to finance, a point that has been repeatedly made to us as we engage with the different stakeholder groups relating to women empowerment. And I also believe that this is a similar scenario that a number of the different stakeholders have had in their engagement with women. There is an extraordinary capital gap which exists for women that is estimated to be $300 billion. In part, this gap continues to persist because women continue to encounter barriers to financial inclusion due to cultural norms, lack of financial information, collateral, lack of knowledge of procedures, and inability to meet requirements. In an effort to address this gap, this event will present the results from SheTrades' latest publication entitled 12 Lessons in Gender Lens Investing. While other reports focused mainly on providing guidance on how to apply a gender lens approach in investing, this report offers the key lessons learned from capital providers and addresses the remaining gaps to meet the needs of women-owned businesses. Today, we have with us one co-national, Ms. Lillian Ndananeze, who comes from a country that I am very fond of, from a country that I'm very proud to be a citizen of, and that country is Zambia. She is, and she will share in this panel her experiences as a female entrepreneur growing her business. And by the way, I don't know if you know, but Zambia has one of the highest proportions of female entrepreneurs in the African continent. Despite this fact, there is still a massive gap financing, as roughly we still have 60%, 67% of Zambian women financially excluded. Since they are mostly operating in the informal sector, they have limited access to networks, mentoring, and other business support structures. In general, it is our understanding, and we have also established that women also find it very difficult, and to the extent that they are not pushed in a corner, they will at all cost try to avoid approaching banks and do not reach out to them as easily as their male counterparts. And this is the case for Zambia as well. Addressing or bridging the capital gap for women is not a task that can be achieved by a single entity. It requires a multi-stakeholder approach and coordinated efforts from government. We will, in that regard, be hearing from Ambassador Alicia Arango on this front. And thank you very much for being here this afternoon. This is also a role that international organizations such as ourselves and the UN SDG Lab, as well as business support organizations, have to chip in. However, it will require support from capital providers. In particular, we have those that are present with us today on the panel, and I wanted to thank Mary for being here with us this morning, or this afternoon rather, for those that are here. Both market enablers and participants, capital providers, are in a unique position to significantly impact access to the financial landscape for women and would benefit from adding a gender lens to their investment and lending portfolio. A wealth of evidence indicates that adopting a gender lens on investment prospects can unlock opportunities for higher returns, growth, and sustainable development. ITC is aware of the gap. This is why in 2018, we launched our SheTrades Invest that is dedicated to unlocking finance for women in developing and least developed markets. The project facilitates connecting women-owned SMEs with capital providers. It is also promoting the mainstreaming of gender lens investment practices and building capacities of women entrepreneurs to become investor-ready. In 2020, we joined forces with CARE and Bamboo capital providers to establish the CARE SheTrades Impact Fund, which is a gender lens investing fund targeting early to growth stage companies that benefit women as consumers, founders, or employees, and indeed economic agents in supply chains in Asia and African countries. Today, as I have said, we are happy to have Mary join us and share again very valuable insights in the work that we have done in this sphere. To date, SheTrades Invest has compiled a detailed database of the financial needs and targets of over 3,000 women-led businesses and has partnered with more than 40 capital providers to unlock access to finance for over 700 women in developing economies. Sometimes we look at the statistics and think from 2018 to now, we're still at 700. The need is much, much more. But one has to work with these women to understand what it takes to get them to a point where they're actually able to take advantage of any opportunity that is before them. And I believe the strides that have been made to this point are really ones that are taking us in the right direction. But to have greater scale and greater impact, we need all those partnerships to come through to be able to enable us reach out to more women, to make more women be in a position to actually access the finance. The data we have collected and the partnerships with the capital providers are the cornerstone of the publication that we are launching today. I am hopeful that with the good work that has already been established and the discussions that spring forth from today, we will be propelled into a future where we have innovative approaches, we have inclusive investment practices, and indeed women's economic empowerment being realized. With this context in mind, I very much look forward to hearing our panelists and wish you all fruitful and insightful discussions. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very, very much, Dorothy. And I had planned a very nice overview of the publication, but because we had already started a bit late, I'm going to make it a very brief overview of the publication. You've got copies, for those of you in the room, you've got copies on your tables. For those of you online, please do go to intresen.org, look through our publications, and download this, and I'm sure you'll find lots of other interesting stuff to download. So this particular publication, 12 Lessons in Gender Lens Investing, is based on a survey of over 2,000 women, as well as interviews with 9 financiers, and it provides first-hand lessons and key success ingredients for gender lens investing. So I'm going to quickly skip through the 12 lessons that we learned in the interviews with financiers. The first one was to ensure buy-in internally. So make sure from top leadership, management, there's buy-in for pursuing a gender lens investment strategy. Second, adopt a common language. So what are the common terms and so on that all stakeholders who are involved can adopt. Third, leverage existing initiatives. No need to reinvent the wheel. Fourth, use networks to give yourself visibility. So partner with women's networks and associations and other networks where plenty of business women are involved. Fifth, targeted marketing to encourage more women to apply. Sixth, develop a specialization, appoint a focal point, start up a team that can really focus on this. Seventh, add non-financial products and services to your offer. Eighth, training, upgrade your team and capabilities. 9, adapt your offer, so adjust requirements to the needs of women-led businesses. 10th, explore digital options to reduce transaction costs, and we saw the pandemic really accelerate the capabilities even of businesses to interact online. 11, data, collect data and measure outcomes to build the case for gender lens investing. And finally, in this time, good to target sectors that have suffered during the pandemic. We saw that women were particularly hit in the pandemic because the sectors that they tended to own business in and work in were hardest hit by the pandemic. And not only does the publication offer these 12 key lessons, it also provides a roadmap on how to actually go about implementing these strategies. But I'm not going to give you that roadmap because I'm sure you're all going to read that publication with great interest. So let's start the panel discussion with the country perspective on gender lens investing. And Colombia is an interesting case. The country rose from 40th to 22nd position in the 2020 WEF Gender Equality Index, indicating that Colombia is doing some good things and with the focus on women-led businesses and entrepreneurship. So I'm going to turn to Ambassador Arango to find out what is Colombia doing to build an ecosystem that supports women's economic empowerment. And could you tell us a little bit about gender lens investing in Colombia?
Thank you very much, Vanessa. I would like to say hello to all of you present here and the ones that are in line. And thank you for this invitation, which is a great pleasure for Colombia to be here. I want to say a special hello to Mrs. Dorothy Tembo, Executive Director of International Trade Center, Mrs. Nadia Eisler, Director of SDG Lab UN Geneva, Marie Puaux, Head of Impact Management, Bamboo Capital Partners, which is here, and our moderator, Vanessa Erogobobo, which is the Chief Sustainable and Inclusive Value Chains in International Trade Center. Thank you again for this invitation. Women are the most important vehicle in social mobilization. And social mobilization means children being better than their parents. That's where we have to aim. All our children have to be better than mom and dad. And women are the ones that make this transformation. And immediately, if this transformation could be made, the cycle of poverty could be broken. So that's the first thing we have in mind in Colombia, to make women's in labor market and entrepreneurship one of the priorities in the national development agenda of Iván Duque. How did we started seeing these issues? Where are our focus on? First, confidence. We have to gain confidence. We do have to gain confidence. Self-esteem, believe in what we do, believe in ourselves, in the way we can develop and make things. We have to address the gap on education and cultural issues, which in Colombia, I have to say, we've been doing better, but still we're far away. And economic empowerment, which is what rounds really the circle of empowerment, because economic empowerment is what really gives women the independence to decide, to be herself, and to do what best she can for her children and for the community. We also need to close the gender gap and the gender violence gap. We cannot grow if we still have gender violence-based gap. In Colombia, unfortunately, we're working on it, but there's a lot to go on. The need of having always in mind the gender issue, but taking it as something normal, not as something special. I don't know, maybe because my English, I try to explain the best I can, but it's like, well, it's like that. There shouldn't be a question about it. Other thing we've done in Colombia, which has been very important, is women in masculinized jobs. What does this mean? We have now women working on jobs that were supposed to be only for men. Like what? Like, for example, petrol explorers, perforators. Now we have a lot of women working on machinery of cement, sand, construction, industry, things that were thought only for men. Because jobs or entrepreneurships don't have to have a gender. If you can do it, do it. It's not if you're a woman or you're a man. If you can do it, do it. So all these gaps and walls that we have to go on, all these obstacles that we have to win, to go on, are very important, but are not mysterious. It's not science that we need to go on. It's political will. And we found that there were 5 structural problems in entrepreneurship in Colombia. That were the female ventures were always smaller size than, in general, they're small, as well as profitability. We've been doing a lot better in wages in Colombia. Our difference is going close to 4%, and we're one of the world's leader in this fortunate issue of difference in wages for women and men. Also, as Dorothy said, our participation as partners is about 30% in Colombia also. We have less information, we have less access to exchange networks, not maybe because we have to draw our interest in these things. We have to learn to get into these things. If we ourselves, women, don't do it, no one will do it for us. So it's our own interest in exchange networks, in having access to information, but that all goes hand in hand with education. It doesn't come along, but it also has to take a lot of will of us women to make it work much better. Colombia has set sectorial offers based on 5 strategic lines, which are leadership, networking, entrepreneurship, information, and financing. We think that training in those areas will make a different kind of person to address entrepreneurship, to address job, and to address life, day-by-day life. So we, on the National Development Pact of this government, we have what we call the Women's Equity Pact for 2018 to 2022. And one of our most important programs is to empower women in economic, political. I have to say that half of the cabinet of Iván Duque, when we started, were women, and we are still a lot of women in government. We need women in politics, because in politics is where decisions are made. So we need more women in politics, where decisions are made. So I do invite women to go on in politics, to combine financial initiatives, entrepreneurship, trade, commerce, jobs with political initiatives, to have the possibility to help make decisions. We have this Women's Entrepreneurship Fund. We also have Women Empowered Homes, Women's Rural Pact, and we have a social laboratory for productive inclusion. I'm only going to talk, because of time, about one of these funds. We have created 1.5 million jobs with these programs I have just mentioned, 52% during the pandemic, especially focused on women. The Women's Entrepreneurship Fund is the most important, and the objective is to promote leadership in economic and social growth and reactivation. And this fund prioritizes 2 areas, rural areas and urban areas. In rural areas, we have growth, because we do have to work for rural women. We in Colombia, most of our women are rural women. So we have to train them to be independent and to work with what they have. And what they have is land to grow.
Arango?
Yes, I know I'm out of time.
And you are making such a powerful intervention.
But-
I could
but
listen
no.
to you all day.
And I'm going to
give you
finish
30
with our
seconds.
goal. Our goal will be having 500,000 rural women and 500,000 urban women entrepreneurs by 2030, and become a world leader in generating opportunities for women. Thank you very much.
That deserves a massive clap. Thank you so much, not only for the oh, no, it's okay. I mean, it's understandable with everything that Colombia is doing. It's extremely impressive. I wrote down in my notes, wow, when you mentioned some of the results that you've been achieving. And as I said, I could listen to you all day. That's really fantastic progress. I'm going to turn over to Gwendolyn, who's the head of impact at FATISA, and I think we can see her on the screen, to get the perspective of an impact fund. And first of all, for me, my question was, who is FATISA, just very briefly? And you know, I wanted to know if many women apply for funds from you, and can they absorb the large ticket sizes that you offer? I believe you offer ticket sizes of $10 million. And then, you know, how do you apply the gender lens investing principles? Over to you, Gwendolyn.
Sure, thank you. So FATISA is a African sector-specific private equity fund manager. So the sectors that we specifically focus on are the food and agri value chain, where we have about $400 million under management. And then in addition, we have a small affordable housing plot of around pots of money of about $40 million, where we invest for affordable housing in the African continent. So we are very much focused on sub-Saharan Africa. That is where we invest. At FATISA, we really see our investment mandate as being able to achieve both impact and commerciality. So I think in the past, there's really been conversations around this is really a trade-off, it's either or, something has to give for the other to be achieved, and that's just not how we do business. That's not how we see the business of the future. We rather see it as an and actually that impact and commerciality bolster and reinforce each other. So do we see many women-led businesses coming to us for financing, given our ticket sizes of, yes, around on average about $10 million? We do. So it's not that women entrepreneurs do not approach us. Of course, the proportion is disproportionate, right? So we see many more male-led deals than we do female deals. I think that's largely, if you look at our sectors, food and agri, while women are doing the majority of farming on the continent, they tend to be more focused on smaller operations and then bigger commercial operations, just, you know, with the entrenched patriarchy, I guess, that we have in Africa. You do see more men leading bigger commercial farming and food value operations, which really we think is a missed opportunity on the continent, and is hindering growth. So if we do invest in more women, we do think that there's a potential, so much potential on the African continent, and women are key to realizing that. So just to give you an indicative idea, we have made 16 direct investments across our 3 funds under management. One of those is into a women-led business. Interestingly, for Dorothy and Lillian on the call, it's a Zambian woman entrepreneur. So this is Miss Mumika Wright, and we have invested into a 300 serviced plots housing scheme in Lusaka, on the outskirts of Lusaka. So yeah, so we do the women deals. What I do think is interesting is, while we're not necessarily seeing as many women-led projects coming to us for financing, we are seeing a lot more balance in the senior management teams, executive management teams. That is something that's changing since I've been at Petiso, which is more than 5 years now. We definitely are seeing that shift, which is great to see. Are women looking for such big ticket sizes? In our experience, no. So I'm just thinking of recently 2 deals which we did look at, but did not accept. Again, one was a noodles business in Zambia, and one a cashews business in Cote d'Ivoire. Both of these deals were just too small for us at the level of PE where we invest, as opposed to I guess venture capital. So yeah, I mean, it's a tough one. Obviously, we would apply the same rigorous standards to any deal, and we would, of course, like to have a greater balance and diversity in our portfolio. But yeah, for reasons that are explained in the 12 Lessons in Gender Lens Investing paper, women just do seem to struggle to access, the sort of mid-cap greater funding, as well as, on a smaller level of sort of a microfinance level. So I think that, we definitely can take steps, and we would apply a gender lens. So just to talk a little bit about how we apply that gender lens. So firstly, we have a very clear investment strategy, which similar to Colombia's strategy, we have 5 pillars. Ours are poverty, food security, jobs and economic growth, climate change, and gender equality. So in pushing that agenda, we would work with all our investee portfolio companies to help them develop a policy, attached to that to have specific targets that they are trying to achieve, to realize that policy. And then we also take that just from the theoretical, obviously, to the practical side, which is where change really happens. And we implement projects at the company level. I'm not sure how I'm doing on time, but if I can give an example, happy to give an example. Otherwise,
I'm afraid I'm going to
okay,
cut you off there. But if there's time at the end of the session, then I'll invite you to give that example. Really, really interesting to hear what you're doing, and we probably know some of these businesses that you mentioned. I'm going to stick with the impact fund area and turn over to Marie to find out how Bamboo tackles this issue of gender lens investing. How do you ensure that that genders are reflected in your impact investment frameworks? What's your role? And maybe tell us a bit about the Care SheTrades fund as well. Thanks, Marie.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here. So Bamboo is an impact asset manager. So impact is really at the core of all that we do. Bamboo has an overall impact thesis, which is to invest in companies that serve the needs of low to middle income populations in developing countries. And we have developed a gender lens into our investments, especially for the fund that we have launched together with the International Trade Center SheTrades program and the NGO CARE. And this fund will invest specifically in women-centered businesses. So what do we mean with women-centered businesses? It can be businesses that have been funded by a woman or that are women-led, but also companies that employ a significant proportion of women, or companies that serve the needs of women as customers, or something very important for us as well, to work with women entrepreneurs in their supply chain. So when we have defined the gender lens of this investment vehicle, what we defined first was the impact objective. What do we want to achieve in terms of gender equality? And what are the impact criteria that we will apply? Our impact criteria for this fund are inspired by the 2X challenge, but we also go a bit further. We have developed a specific investment thematic around those women in supply chain, those women entrepreneurs, which we cannot finance directly because of the ticket size of the fund. We cannot invest in a micro entrepreneur per se, but we can invest in a cooperative or an agribusiness that works with women producers and that give them access to markets. So this was the first step, defining what are the impact criteria that we will use in the screening phase. Then in terms of the due diligence that we do, we have developed gender due diligence tools that we apply. So prior to investing in each company, we will further inquiry about what will be the potential impact that the company will have on women, what are the processes and practices that the company has put in place within the company to protect women and to empower women. And then when we approve an investment in the deal structuring phase, we will define how the company will measure its impact on women, and we will agree with the company on a list of indicators, gender disaggregated metrics, that the company will report. And we will use those indicators to report to our own investors as well on the impact that we generate for women. And regularly during the holding period, we will monitor this impact that we generate for women. And all this gender lens that we have designed has been built in a collaborative manner together with the gender experts of the NGO CARE and the SheTrades program of the International Trade Center.
Thank you very much, Marie. And I hope I will have to have another one of these sessions, Anna, so that we can go into a lot more detail, I think, because it's so interesting, and it's such a shame that we only scratch the surface of what everyone is doing. I'm going to bring in now a different perspective, the perspective of the client, the woman entrepreneur, and I'll turn to Madhumita first and then to Lillian, to tell us a bit about the challenges that they've had in accessing capital for their businesses. I'm sure a lot of this will be familiar to many of us, but also to hear from them what have been some really good practices or best practices that you have seen in accessing finance. So over to you first, Madhumita. In India, tell us a little bit about your company as well and where you are. If you could start with unmuting yourself.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Hello,
I hope I'm audible to everyone.
Yes, we can hear you.
My greetings and respects to the distinguished dignitaries and the panelists present here to discuss the publication of the 12 lessons on gender lens investing. So I am Madhumita Sarkar Guha from Kolkata, India, and I've been a serial entrepreneur, starting out with my design firm engaged in turnkey execution of interior architecture projects in Eastern India from 2003. So the business model and the revenue generation and running and managing of a design firm is slightly different from what I'm doing right now. So earlier it was more on an advance payment agreement system, and hence the urgency or the need of funding for the business was not really high. However, I launched Luke's Living, my present company, and ventured into the arena of manufacturing handwoven textiles, furnishings, accessories, garments, with the intention of exports, international exports, that is. And because I realized there's a scope being offered by the rich craft heritage of the state of West Bengal here in India. In fact, India, each and every state has a very rich craft heritage, and that can be highly used by the women entrepreneurs of the country, and it is slowly taking up shape. So we produce produce and promote as well sustainable textile manufacturing using handlooms and hand embellishing them with the use of batik techniques, with the use of embroidery techniques, block printing techniques, etc. And we are engaging about 400 artisans, both men and women, in this particular practice that we are doing right now. So we are making them into final products of garments, of fabric yardages, of home textiles, etc., for exports, and very little for domestic as of the moment. Nonetheless, when I started Luke's Living, I did not realize that the business model of an export business is more inventory intensive, and it requires a regular generation of fund to be put back into the business to keep a continuous rolling of clients and collections. So there was this, because if we wanted a substantial year-on-year growth, additional funds needed to be pumped into the business in order to execute orders and successfully add to the number of clients that were handled at any moment. So from 2016, when I started this particular venture, to 2019, I was completely bootstrapped, and I infused funds from my other business, the first business that I was in, into this business to run it successfully. In 2019, the government came out with a particular loan format, which was an online loan format for entrepreneurs, saying it to be a PSB loan in 59 minutes. So it was an online format wherein you had to deposit the kind of documentation and financial statements that you had generated over the business over the last 3 years, and an in-principle loan would be guaranteed. So I did that, and I was granted a loan of 16 lakh rupees, which was more or less sufficient for me at that point of time to take forward my business. However, I was given a list of 3 banks, where nationalized banks, where I had to approach them and get the formalization done. So from 2019 March to the time the pandemic hit 2020, I was in talks and follow-ups with the bank, but sadly, what happened was that the first and the foremost thing is that they baffled me with their complete array of products that they wanted me to take, and with their complete banking jargon. Because first and the foremost thing is you will have to have a collateral. Collateral-free loans are not really encouraged by us. So collateral became a big elephant in the room, and I was not willing to put up collateral because I knew the kind of collateral that I would put up would outweigh the value of the fund that I would be drawing in from the bank at that point of time. So collateral was out of the question. For non-collateral loans, they in the sense the bank manager flatly said that the kind of documentation and administrative cost that would be involved in giving you a non-collateral small ticket loan would be too high and low return for us, rather than a big ticket loan to somebody of a bigger enterprise. So that way, the entire year of my entrepreneurial efforts were wasted on the bank, and till date, I'm sorry about that. Till date,
Madhumita, I'm going to give you 1 minute to wrap up your remarks. And I mean, the question that you won't have time to answer would have been, what was the support from the government if you still needed the collateral. But I'm going to give you 1 minute to wrap up your remarks, and perhaps to ask you to highlight a best practice or something, a good initiative from a financier that you have experienced.
Sadly, I have not experienced any kind of a banking or infusion of funds from the government or non-government non-banking organizations here in India as of moment. But there have been entrepreneurs who have been able to take help of the government. But I think what needs to be done is to have a little more sensitization and a little more understanding as to what women entrepreneurs are needing at the moment. Because I think for me, the market is slowly opening up, and other exporters like me also would be needing funds. And we would be needing such organizations who would understand the kind of needs that we have of short-term loan, maybe just in order to get the ball rolling into our business and to garner funds and profit for ourselves. So I'd like to say that much.
Thank you very much, Madhumita. And I'm going to swiftly get a different perspective. I see Gwendolyn waving her arms, and I'm sure you might have had some comments to make, but that's for the next event that we're going to have. And Lillian, give us the perspective from a different continent, you know, some of the challenges and good practices that you have experienced. Over to you, Lillian.
Hello, hi everybody. Hope I am clear, and thank you for giving us the opportunity, the platform to share our views. And I am so happy to be able to share my views all the way from Miss Dorothy Timbo's country. So my name is Lilian, and I am the CEO and co-founder of Wide Energy. Wide Energy is a women initiative for delivering clean energy. So we offer last mile distribution basically for your typical bottom of the pyramid that have been using unclean source of energy simply because they are on the off-grid, simply because the grid won't reach them anytime soon. Not only because they cannot afford it, but because of the setup, because of the cost of reaching those areas in the rural area. That is what we do. But most importantly, maybe a short background is that 7 years ago, I did quit a job that I liked, where I was working in Washington, D.C. I followed my husband who wanted to settle back home, and I did not have a vision then, but I knew what my purpose was and to empower women into becoming independent. And that was my mission, and that's how Wide Energy was born in 2016. And we started on a cash basis. Here, I want to bring the scenario that you want to do something, but where do you start from? How do you grow? What is needed into growing a business? I started on a small cash basis where we were training women into basic sales, where they were selling for an amount and getting profit, getting a commission on sales made on the solar torches. This was on a cash basis. Of course, we wanted to grow. I wanted to see this grow. We trained about 80 women, young girls and women, and they were making a living out of it, better than not doing anything, staying home, ending up getting married at 16 years old. But we showed them that they could do something with the business. What helped us was access to a grant in 2018. And this grant was from AECF, which is commonly known as a challenge initiative, something, sorry, it's been some time. Anyway, so we got access to the grant, and that grant was given to us specifically because it was a women-led enterprise. And I want to stress the fact that I don't think we would have gotten it if it wasn't a women-led company. The competition that got it were bigger firms, bigger companies that had access to matching funds and were coming from scratch. We built a company from the grant that we received in 2018. We're able to move from cash basis our purpose was to empower women to become the agents. So we are using women. Oh, my connection. I hope you can hear me. Am I audible?
Now you broke up a little bit, but since you asked, I'm going to ask you to wrap up your comments as well.
Yes, so in terms of challenges, there are like enormous challenges. Of course, most of them have been mentioned. There's a knowledge of information. If you don't have that knowledge of information, you don't know which door to knock on. There is most of the application processes are long and they require funds. You have to have a legal team, you have a proper financing that is not given to a startup company, that is discouraging for small or the many SMEs companies that Ms. Tembo mentioned. They get discouraged in the process. The same human resources becomes expensive for a startup. And yet we can, and yet we know that for us to achieve the SDGs, we cannot do that without the women. And of course, you have the culture norms that does not really allow the women or the female to participate. Most of it has been mentioned. There's Collateral. I've entered into rooms where they thought I'm a woman, but I'm coming to take notes for some other man who is running the business. I've had eyes turned or asked me who else I'm coming with when I'm trying to negotiate a deal at the bank. I've had all sorts of bias that come because you are a woman-led. But what are the best practices? I simply believe that having a vision and sticking to it and explaining the vision and working now backwards towards the many challenges that I've mentioned in terms of access to information, making sure that your finances are in order, but those are not things that you just wake up and are able to achieve. It has taken us a long time to do that. But all in all, it is achievable as long as we believe in our vision, as long as we keep knocking on those doors. I started as in the Solar Industry Association of Zambia, and I was the only woman at the table. Mostly people thought I was here to take some notes for somebody else.
Lillian, I'm going to have to wrap up your part now. But you know, it's always wonderful to hear entrepreneurs speak with so much passion. And I'm going to throw out the notes. You've motivated me to throw out the notes that were prepared with the help of my team, and turn to the audience and actually ask how many of the audience are involved in investing as, you know, in impact, you know, as impact funds or banks or anything like that. Is there any, you okay? Not to put this spot on you, and you don't have to answer the question, but I mean, this is a question that I ask myself every single time that I sit in these meetings, that I meet entrepreneurs. We put a man on the moon more than half a century ago with, you know, much more limited advances in technology. But, you know, for 20 years, more than 20 years, I've been listening to these stories, the challenges of accessing finance, of SMEs, or women-led businesses. We know the challenges very well. So my question always is, why don't we just solve them? I cannot understand why we're still having this conversation over and over again. And I'm throwing out the challenge to funds, to governments, and to others to really get together and solve this issue for once and for all before the end of the pandemic, I hope. So with that, I'm going to turn to Alice at Opportunity Bank in Uganda, to ask what the key elements to consider are when implementing a gender lens approach in microfinance targeting women, which I find to be quite a counterintuitive question, since we often think of microfinance as being a very woman-friendly sector. So Alice, what are some of the key elements to consider, and how can multi-stakeholders get together to invest in women efficiently? Alice, you're on mute. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Vanessa, and to all the amazing ladies on this panel. Just to talk about the key elements, I would say intentional, and being intentional. First, different players must be intentional, and there must be deliberate efforts in place to put in place policies, products, services, and people to drive inclusive financing. And we as players must decide that this is what we want to do, no matter the challenges. We must be intentional in reaching out to the women. And incentive, for example, in Opportunity Bank, there's an incentive scheme that was introduced particularly to motivate staff to reach out to more and more women in the untouched territories. And just to push this, bring this home, about 583 women, because of this incentive scheme, micro women were reached just in the last quarters, that is July to September 2021, were reached with loans just in the last quarter. Then innovations should also be very intentional and directed towards breaking traditional barriers to access for women. And some of the barriers that even the ladies on this panel have talked about is issues of collateral. most women, when they get into a bank, there's need for a traditional collateral like land title or a car logbook, which many women would not ideally have. So we have the trust group methodology where women can be given loans based on trust. A group of women come together and co-guarantee each other. We've also set up a collateral guarantee fund for women who are not very comfortable giving their very valuable, possibly collateral for lower funding. So we have the collateral guarantee fund, which supports women to access loans without having a title deed or even a car logbook. So offering affordable financing with support from partners. We are also piloting on interest buy down to our women entrepreneurs to ensure that they get loans at a fairly subsidized interest rates. And then on to the different stakeholders coming together to advance gender lens investing. Speaking from our context as Opportunity Bank, as well as Opportunity International, we know that different players have different expertise, strengths, and capabilities that they bring to the table. For example, Opportunity Bank has the products, services, staffing, expertise in providing different financial services and training, as well as the footprint in different parts of the country, both physically and through providing digital financial services. Then there are also a number of women-focused organizations in our communities that know where the women are, what they do, and what kind of support they need. Looking at Opportunity International, that is our major fundraiser. They reach out to both private and public sector donors to ensure that we have some funding to support this cause. We have different partners like UPS that is providing us with some funding support to break systematic barriers to access or finance by the women. Then we of course have ITC SheTrades that provides specialized trainings and market connections, because we are trying as much as possible to connect as many of our women entrepreneurs as possible in Opportunity Bank to the ITC SheTrades platform to be able to access markets. So all these partners are the wind beneath the wings of Opportunity Bank to enable effective outreach to more and more women. So yes, to that question, different stakeholders should come together to access gender lens, to advance gender lens investing in an efficient manner. So thank you very much, Vanessa, and thank you very much to the panelists.
Thank you very much for that, Alice, and I will give away some information. I'm Ugandan too, so very nice to hear from you. Where are you, Alice?
Yeah, I'm in Uganda.
Where?
Where? In Kampala.
Oh, fantastic. That's my hometown as well. Wonderful to hear from you.
Nice to know.
So we're going to have a short break in the room where we're going to enjoy a little video to give you a bit of a flavor of some of the women entrepreneurs that we work with. Would someone put the video on and turn the lights down? And some popcorn would be great, but that's for another time as well.
So SheTrades is a program to support 3 million women in the world to connect to the market.
En mi cultura, la abeja maya, la melipona, es sagrada para nosotros.
Trà là một nghệ thuật. Các nghệ nhân của chúng tôi đã có truyền thống đan lát là từ hàng nghìn năm nay rồi.
Women on the march, on the rise, with a fire in their hearts and a prize in their eyes. 3 million women on a roll, on a mission. Mr. You ain't competition for a sister with ambition. As her mama used to tell her, trust your female intuition.
3 million women.
3 million women mean business.
Đối với người phụ nữ Việt Nam thì không phải là cái đương chức làm mẹ.
Qué bonitos ojos tienes.
She's here, she's there, she's firm, she's fair. She knows a woman's place is in the chair. She's smart, she's sharp, she's keen. keen, she's able. She knows a woman's place at the boardroom table. 3 million women mean business.
Más mujeres para que trabajen como nosotras.
She's a voice of her gender with her own point of view. Changing the agenda, which is wherever due. She's 3 million women. 3 million women. 3 million women. She'll heal, she'll deal, she'll sow, she'll grow. She's an entrepreneur from her head to her toe. She's a daughter, supporter, exporter, transporter, transformer, transforming her life.
Trà nó mang một nét văn hóa, tinh hoa của người Việt.
Làm ra những sản phẩm sáng tạo bằng tay. Bèo giạt mây trôi.
SheTrades me dará la oportunidad de exportar la miel.
She's 3 million women with a hunger for success, a thirst to be first, a quest to impress, shaking up the planet like GPS. 3 million women, yeah. With a hope, with a need. When women succeed, the world succeeds.
Vinh dự hôm nay được tiếp đón các bạn.
My name is Helen from Happy Hand.
Mi nombre es Anselma Chalewan. Yo cuido la abeja melipona.
All women in the world, believe in yourself. 3 million women
mean business.
You can do anything.
You can do anything.
Well, thank you very much. What I really love about this video is that all these 3 businesses focus on some aspect of sustainability, and we all know how important our planet is. So to bring, I think we've got 20 more minutes. So to bring the panel to a close, I'm going to focus on one question for each of our speakers. We heard at the beginning about a $3 billion financing gap for women. And I would like to give each of our panel members a couple of minutes to respond to what is still needed to bridge that financing gap for women. You can be as creative as you want. How can we reimagine the world at 2030 and women accessing the funding that they need? So I'm going to start actually with the online panel members and maybe give the floor to you, Gwendolyn, if you could kick us off with your thoughts on what's still needed to bridge that $300 billion financing gap.
Sure, thank you. And as you say, you know, why aren't we just doing it? And I think that really is pivotal. So I guess from my perspective, I think platforms where linking women entrepreneurs and investors and funders, so linking the finance and the entrepreneur to each other for women, I think that would be a critical step, exactly like SheTrades, and having these kind of platforms and advancing them. I think these, you know, this would contribute a lot of momentum to what we're trying to achieve in terms of empowering women as investable opportunities. I really think that having these kind of networks would enable women to have the voice, which I think you know, in traditional roles, and if you look at traditional private equity, perhaps is missing. You know, the deals are still very much being made by men, you know, so on our side, you know, on the PE side itself, we're still looking at 80+% of investment professionals being men. And I think that if a woman entrepreneur finds a woman on the other side, it does change the conversation. So I think, you know, sort of intervening at all levels of the process and having these networks where women are represented on both sides of the table, and not just from the PE side, but from the government side, from the bank side, I think that would give a lot of momentum. And I think also, just to wrap up, you know, it's individual changes. So yes, we can talk about, you know, on a large scale, what does a country do? What does a PE firm do? What does a bank do? But it's really changing also our mind as women, that we are investable, as investors, that women are investable. And as men, you know, similarly, getting rid of those unconscious biases, which unfortunately are still widespread.
Thank you very much, Gwendolyn. And Alice, your perspectives would be great as well.
Thank you very much. In my opinion, breaking society barriers is very key to advancing gender-lens investing. We live in a society which is generally patriarchal, where men control most of the resources, and sadly, they even control the women. In most societies, it's the women who till the land, plant, weed, and harvest their crops. But when it comes to selling the produce and making decisions on incomes, the man then takes over. And this must really change. Women usually are the major contributors to the economic well-being of the families and communities, yet the least rewarded for their efforts. Men should therefore be helped to appreciate, support, and recognize, as well as reward women as active contributors in sustainable development. In Opportunity Bank Uganda, as well as in partnership with Opportunity International, a curriculum has been developed which is called Farming as a Family Business, an effort towards mindset change for men to appreciate women as very valuable contributors to household incomes as well as well-being. So in Uganda, in the Ugandan setting, we still need some effort towards mindset change to pull women out of the kitchen into a place where they can own their businesses, where they can own assets, and where they have the freedom and ability to access capital.
Thank you very much, Alice. And I'm going to turn to Marie, also from the financial services sector. Do you agree?
Thank you very much. So yes, from an asset manager perspective, what we see is that there is still a high risk perception of the type of investments that we do in the geographies where we invest. And we believe that blended finance vehicles can bring a powerful solution because of the catalytic capital that those vehicles bring, that protect the investment of the private sector investors to further advance gender equality and invest in impactful companies. Another challenge that we have identified is the lack of liquidity of our funds, and we are working on providing offers of flexible notes to investors so that we can have tailor-made maturities that better match the needs of institutional investors. And we also need to have a critical size for the private sector to invest in those vehicles. So we are also working on designing some agglomeration mechanism that provide exposure to several funds so that we can have a critical size and be more attractive to institutional investors. Now, on the impact side, we believe there's a need for public-private partnerships. And with the SheTrades Impact Fund, what we do is providing a technical assistance facility on top of the financing that we provide to women-centered businesses. And we believe that this combination of both financing and technical assistance intervention will be key to scale the impact on women of the companies in which we invest. And historically, Bamboo has been investing a lot in microfinance. We have invested in wonderful companies, for instance, one in Colombia, Banco W, which was the first microfinance institution that provided a gender social bond that was subscribed by IDB Invest and that will be used to finance women SMEs in Colombia. We also invested in some very interesting business model. For instance, Amarta in Indonesia. It's a peer-to-peer lending platform, and they provide loans to women micro-entrepreneurs. And something that we have seen as a very powerful lever is the non-financial services that they provide as well on top of the financial services. What they have identified is that for those women micro-entrepreneurs, The first contributor to poverty was actually health expenses, and they have provided health checkups for their borrowers. They have provided eye testing as well and free eyeglasses that have helped improve the productivity of their borrowers. So we believe that those models that bring a non-financial service and support to their borrowers on top of the financing for microfinance institution is very powerful as well. So overall, helping companies strengthen their capacities and strengthen their gender approach, for instance, by providing better working conditions for women within the company, or to better include the feedback from women customers to develop the products and services and better improve the products and services for women, or also to increase the participation of women in the supply chains of companies is really key. And we believe that gender equality is a powerful driver of economic development, and we hope that gender lens investing will become mainstream. And we think that public-private partnerships with NGOs and UN agencies that are seeking to join forces will be key, because all of them will bring complementary approaches, and all together we hope to bridge the gap for women entrepreneurs.
Thank you very much, Marie. And it's just really interesting to hear all these different perspectives. It feels like, you know, I started my career in banking, so that was a while ago, and it feels like the conversation about financial services is changing. You know, it's a bit of a paradigm shift, you know, becoming a bit more holistic and looking at providing, you know, solutions that work, that require all hands on deck, really, to address some of these gaps. And while we're still in the room, I'm going to turn to Ambassador Arango to give us a bit of a sense of what you think is still needed to close the gap.
I have to begin by telling that I agree with what the panelists have said through all the panel and to answer this question. But I also think that we have to remember always the power of the simple. And that's going to the roots. And we women need to gain more self-confidence, need more training, more networking. We need to be focused on results to see where are we gonna go. Focus on results. And I repeat, we need more women in politics, in decision making. That's where we can gain a lot of space in decision making. And we need short-term action. It's now, no matter what.
Thank you, very powerful. Now, no matter what. Since I have like 1 or 2 minutes to play with, I'm going to turn to the audience and ask you if you have any comment, anything that you'd like to say, any reflections after listening to this discussion. Yes, I've got just the one comment that I'm going to allow. If someone could pass a microphone across, that would be wonderful. Sorry to catch you by surprise. Take one audience comment, and then I'm going to close the panel with the women entrepreneurs before I introduce the speaker making our closing remarks. Over to you. Please introduce yourself briefly and make your comment.
Yes, hello, I'm Sydney. I'm with the SDG lab at the UN in Geneva. And I have a question. Perhaps Gwendolyn is suited to answer this.
We're taking comments, no questions, because there's no time to answer them.
Okay, I guess maybe one of the questions that I'll leave this session with is, we know that the odds are stacked against women entrepreneurs. And so what are the discussions, for example, that are happening at these investor closed boardrooms that we're not hearing about? So for example, the cashew company that didn't get investment, where they're not on par with some of the companies that are being funded by men. I guess I'm just a little curious about what people who aren't in the investment community aren't hearing or don't understand about the decisions that are being made.
Very, very good question. And I think that's one of the things that we need to do is data, 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 so that we can advance this agenda. So to close the panel, I ask you, Lillian, to go first with just 30 seconds of reflections on what needs to be done, and then Madhumita.
Thank you. I also agree with all the speakers. We have a common goal and we understand it the same way, which is very good. On my part, I will really again focus on more female fund managers, as this will mean that there's no bias when we are assessing who gets the money. I think that's what is important. I will talk about the technical assistance that we really, really need to address the unique challenges that women do face. I could also talk about the gender-friendly policies. We talked about the collateral, we talked about the tax, we talked about the incentives. I often wonder, maybe I'll put it out there, what would happen if we had taxes that will have incentives for women-led companies, the same way we have zero tax for the solar industry, for example. I also want to mention that if the issues are addressed by as many women as possible, then we will kind of bridge the gap that is out there. I would also talk about maybe the overall building an ecosystem that helps us, that help the female funders. Clearly, we understand the challenges that we have, and maybe I will wrap it out there.
Thank you, Lillian. Madhumita, the last word is yours.
Thank you, Vanessa. So for me, the one phrase would be women lending to women. So women lending to women either through banks or through other institutions, or judging the capability of women. So there has to be parameters where women are really understanding and sensitizing the entire facet of another woman's business, and judging as to how much of a fund is needed and what propulsion will the business bring in, and how far will it go, what is the scalability. Everything is judged by a woman. But of course, credibility issues have to be in places, compliances have to be in places. We want to go by the book, but then we need a very fair chance to survive in this world. So women lending to women would be my catchphrase. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madhumita. Thank you very much to our panelists online. Thank you very much, Marie, Ambassador, for joining me here on stage. One more time, please do take the publication with you. If you don't have it, please do download it from intracen.org. It's there along with lots of other great publications. And now I give the floor to Ms. Nadia Isler to provide the closing remarks. Nadia, welcome.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. I actually had a prepared speech, but no offense to my colleagues who helped me to write those closing remarks. I will kindly just put them aside and just try to reflect a little bit on what we heard this afternoon. And these are really personal thoughts that I share in this sort of informal setting. First of all, congratulations to all of you. It's very inspiring as a woman, but also as an intrapreneur. I had the privilege of starting from scratch an SDG lab, but I had the privilege of doing so with the great privilege of knowing I had a salary at the end of the month. So first of all, I'd like to really express my deep appreciation and really admiration to all the women entrepreneurs out there for all the hurdles they have to go through also in starting businesses. I think this afternoon we had very great concrete examples of what is being done and what can be done and what could be done if systemically the world were a different place. I think it's wonderful to see also the great work that SheTrades is doing and chaperoning. And it's great to see the strong women leadership and community behind this movement. What strikes me, though, is that although I think we all agree in this room, and all of this, I think, has been underlined by every single intervention this afternoon, we all know that investing in women, in businesses led by women, or investing in women for that matter, so in initiatives that have impact on women, we all know that it makes SDG sense. We all know that it makes financial risk sense in terms of decreasing financial risk. And we all know that it makes sense in terms of yielding higher returns on investment, right? So we kind of all know that. Yet, we're still at a level of conversation where we're talking about an issue as if it were a women's issue. So if I look at the room this afternoon, and no offense to the men outside the room, and thank you for the men in the room, but as I look at the audience, it seems as though this is still just a woman's thing, led by women. Now, there's a huge discrepancy between the narrative that we all agree on, that investing in women-led businesses and in women makes SDG sense, makes financial return sense, and yet it seems as though there's a discrepancy in terms of the ambition, right? We still have women having to fight to have access to the boardrooms. We still have women who have to fight to have loans, women to have recognition, and for businesses led by women to be seen as credible as businesses led by men. So I guess my question is, what will it take for us next year at the next Building Bridges session to ensure that in the room we don't have only a majority of women, and that what all the great examples and the narrative that has been so ably carried by all these women leaders we've heard this afternoon, what will it take to also have men walking that talk, and not only kindly talking or supporting women? It's not about that. It's about men speaking out and speaking up also about investing in women-led businesses makes business sense, makes economic sense, and makes impact sense. And to my knowledge, we're still not there yet, and that's really, really a shame. So in the spirit of building bridges, as you know, SDG Lab was one of the founding partners of this initiative. So we have a slight bias in my team in thinking, okay, what are the next bridges we need to build? So I think this first, that remaining bridge between men and women, and that inadvertently we're creating a women's silo or a men's silo, and there's a problem there. So how are we going to face that? And I dream of having a session on that maybe next year together with all of you. Some of you also mentioned the importance of building bridges between women and investors through these platforms, right? I think that was to your point, Gwendolyn. And I think definitely here in Geneva, in this ecosystem, there is this space to create these informal conversations between investors, male and female, as well as with women leading businesses, as well as with men leading businesses. So creating those platforms, building those bridges between different communities of people, I strongly believe in that too, and I really think we can do more of that here in Geneva and elsewhere. And building also bridges in terms of linking all the work that is being done by women leaders with the economic case. So I think that there needs to be a stronger bridge there so that we really see women leadership and women businesses not just as a woman thing, but really as it makes economic sense. And then maybe last but not least, what's the risk of not massively investing in women-driven businesses or businesses with impact for women? In the midst of a pandemic like we're experiencing today, I think there's not a better time to ask ourselves that question. What will the world look like if we don't actually walk that talk of bridging the gap between the narrative, which is very compelling. The narrative is compelling. It makes sense to invest in women. Yet, when we see the kind of sessions we have this afternoon, which is brilliant session, but there are a lot of ears out there that should be in the room. So on that note, and I hope I'm not finishing on a negative note, it's really not my intent, quite the opposite, is to motivate us all in this room to build bridges with the people outside the room, so that next year, both in the audience and the panel, we have a diversity of views, female and male, but also diversity of views, even more so like we did today, both from the governmental side, investors, asset managers, and maybe what, commercial bankers, private bankers. That's maybe what we should be aspiring to also for Building Bridges next year. So on that note, I'd like to thank you all very, very much for partnering in organizing this session this afternoon. And again, my great respect and admiration for all the work you're doing. Thank you.